Democracy entails people who run their business as well being forced to run their businesses poorly by people who can't run businesses at all. Welcome to Keith Knight, Don't Tread on Anyone, and the Libertarian Institute. Today we have Patrick of Disenthrall. Check out all his platforms. BitChute, Odyssey, all of these will be in the description below at disenthrall.me/platforms. Patrick, where is the best place to find videos and your podcast?
Odyssey.com. That's ODYSEE.com. We have all of our channels there, and they're all linked on that URL you just gave. It is a pleasure to talk to you again. I always look forward to these.
Well, brother, thank you for coming on. So today we have Richard Wolff enlightening us with an alternative to the current system. A lot of negative things. He has a solution which, much like everything else they sell us on, just has benefits. Healthcare should be free. The fire department should be free. There's no downside. So it's really nice of him to show this to us. Patrick, start the video whenever you're ready, and please stop it whenever you'd like. I'm sure you and I will have the same spots to complain in.
All right, here we go.
This is Richard Wolff with another Econo Minute. I want to talk to you briefly about economics, democracy, and the way we do business. I want to make a simple point. If you believe in democracy...
Let me stop you right there. No, really.
Yeah.
The first thing that I want to point out, because this is going to come up again later in this very short video, is that we are conflating governance of a coercive institution called government, which in terms of the way humans can associate, it should be considered like the half stupid weird guy from up the road. Like, it's the worst way to associate with people on the list of ways to associate with people, where he's going to compare democracy to how a company is run. Now, my defense in this video is going to be of a free market capitalism, certainly not anything that is in bed with that coercive institution. And I don't appreciate the conflation of the two: democracy, which is a method of coercive governance, and corporations, which is just sort of self-governing your own resources. Just wanted to start there with that note.
Well, that's the great equivocation trick. They say, you like democracy, people being involved in things. So, and that's what government is. Okay, first of all, that's wrong. What makes government unique is it claims the right to rule people who it hasn't contracted with in a geographical area. And second of all, I don't know that that's inherently a good thing. Everyone being involved in the voting process. I mean, what percentage of people were involved in writing Seinfeld? A microscopic amount, but it was the greatest thing ever, and we're able to enjoy things like Seinfeld. What percentage of people were involved in making this excellent computer that has lasted me years and I enjoy so much? A very microscopic amount, almost a voluntary oligarchy, as he would call it, but there's nothing wrong with this sort of specialization. So yes, the equivocation of people voluntarily getting together and voting as a mechanism of decision-making versus using it as a tool of, let's say, a lynch mob or something like that. Well, those involve initiating violence. So that totally different. Excellent point.
As I suspect most of us do. Then you know it means basically that if you are affected by a decision, you have the right to participate in it.
Let me stop you right there. This is going to be a long. I disagree with like every single thing that comes out of this guy's mouth. Do you want to take this one first?
No, please go.
So I think that might be the worst description of democracy that I've ever heard. Like, just to be frank, think about what that means. If you're affected by a decision, you have the right to participate in it. Does that mean because 50 years from now, my kid might interact with you differently based on how I parent today, that literally everyone around me has the right to participate in the parenting of my children? Just for one example, but I can think of a billion. That is absurd. That is nonsense. You affect the people around you all the time. The thing that's important to consider when you're affecting people is their consent and the property ownership involved, which, is a core issue with this guy. What do you have to say?
So as far as getting the consent of things that affect me, maybe I was absent the day we took a vote on whether or not he should be allowed to make this video. It looks like he just made this video and just decided on his selfish own self to engage in something without putting it up to a vote and making sure it was in our greatest interest. Of course not. This is so beyond ridiculous. Everything you do. Honey, I know you're saying you want to break up with me, but I get a vote in this, and because you have done a number of things, you're actually a felon, and you don't get any votes. So you're in big trouble now. Well, the fact that something affects you, I mean, one of the biggest things that affects me is the number of people who choose to allocate their scarce time, resources, and money to watching other people. That negatively affects me. That doesn't mean I have the right to forcibly stop these people from making mutually beneficial voluntary exchanges. So he's not differentiating between what you have a right to not engage in and something that just affects you. If I stop hanging out with the people of the Disenthrall channel and I only hang out with people of the Liberty Weekly channel, Patrick will be affected. If you're not affected, please don't say anything. Just assume that that's an example. So yes, you might be affected when people stop hanging out with you. That doesn't mean they have a right to vote you to forcibly stop you from engaging in those things. Blockbuster was affected by a lot of people making a decision, and it didn't have to be up to a vote. It's just voluntary decision making. So this is his premise, and since his premise is wrong, basically everything that follows is also wrong.
Yeah, but it's still going to be fun to, have some popcorn and watch it and pick it apart. So I loved your original example when you were saying, look, he's making this video. I didn't get a vote, and it's definitely affecting me because I'm trying to create a world that's better for my children, and he is actively working to create a world that I think is worse for my children, and I demand a say because he's affecting. And that would also mean that anytime you make a post on social media and you get ratioed, when you get more disapproval than approval, more thumbs down type activity than thumbs up, that is the collective telling you that you had no right to make such a post and affect them and their world in that way. It requires no further discussion because I think it's easy to see the absurdity on its face.
That's the idea about our political system. Since we are affected by the decisions made by mayors and senators and governors and presidents, well, we participate in their decisions by having the authority to hire and fire them, to vote for them, or to vote against them. At least we have some participation in the decisions. But it is not that way in capitalist enterprises. In those,
dum, dum, dum.
Here's the typical story. A tiny group of people at the top, the owner, the management that the owner chooses, or in a modern corporation, the major shareholders, usually a dozen or so institutions or people who decide who is on the board of directors. That's usually 15 or 20 people, and they make all the key decisions. They decide what to produce, how and where, and what to do with the products of the labor of all the people. And what about all the people who work in an enterprise? They have no participation at all.
You want this or do you want me to?
Please start us off.
So he's just flat wrong that every single person at a company has no participation, and it's just this sort of enslavement to the tiny minority of people at the top. Your participation is agreeing voluntarily, absent coercion, to show up at the office every day. Your participation is agreeing to do a job. Your participation is bringing your skills and your training, knowledge, wisdom, expertise to bear every day at work. Your participation is sitting down at the very contentious bargaining table in the labor market and negotiating your salary, negotiating your benefits, negotiating what work and responsibilities you're going to take on. That is your participation. You do it every day, just as much as every other single person from the bottom to the top of a company does. Now, of course, I'm only defending companies that are not in bed with government here. I'm going to keep reiterating that because we're not talking about these megacorps that take tons of money from coercive government. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a free, voluntary, what I would call maybe a libertarian or a free market, laissez-faire company where everybody is there consensually. You participate in all the decisions that affect you by showing up and continuing to agree to be there. That's the first thing I wanted to say. What do you have to say?
So if I had to guess, I just want to ask you, and you just take a shot in the dark, what percentage of NBA players do you think get the vast majority of airtime and jersey sales?
Oh, well, it's probably a Pareto distribution. So 80-20 or maybe 90-10. So 10% probably.
It's probably something microscopic, like, when I was younger, it was like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Kobe Bryant sold like 95% of the jerseys. As far as singers go, you have people like Adele and Eminem getting millions of dollars for tours, and the average singer is not only close to not being that wealthy, they play at bars for free and are sometimes not even able to charge. As far as podcasters go, it's something ridiculous, like 1% get 95% of the listening audience. As far as actors go, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, $20 million a movie. The average extra does not get that much. So what he's not appreciating is that this inequality is everywhere. It has nothing to do with the free market. What percentage of politicians get the vast majority of airtime? Well, AOC gets way more than, I don't even know who the congressmen of Arizona are, because they just don't get as much influence. This James Burnham referred to this as the Iron Law of Oligarchy. He said, whatever social changes occur, whatever happens to economic relations, whether property is in private hands or socialized organization, will remain, and through organization, an oligarchical rule will be perpetuated. So the example he uses is a union. So there's a bunch of workers and they form a union. Only about a third of the union workers show up to the meetings. And 98% of those people are completely silent during the meetings. One or two people are really persuasive speakers and they can rile people up. And so you end up getting 1% of the union making 99% of the decision. This is the Iron Law of Oligarchy that happens all the time when people get together. One of my favorite memes ever is, communism is about equality, and there's this giant statue of Chairman Mao, because it's like, how many Chinese people got a statue that big? None. How many, commies are as powerful as Stalin? 1 out of 1 billion. So, yes, the inequality argument's completely illegitimate.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to mention was that there is a vast blind spot, and this makes sense because of the Pareto distribution of people running companies that you were just talking about. There's a vast blind spot amongst at least 90% of the population of what it's like to sit on the other side of the table in an employment competition, in the market for skilled labor. Everybody sees it from the employee side, from the laborer's side, but not from the hirer side. Let me tell you, I have direct experience in this area. It is visceral. It is cutthroat. It is so difficult to find, hire, to get them, and by hire, I mean get them to agree to work with me, and then retain the skilled people that you need. Your companies live and die based on your decisions and your ability to compete in the labor market. It's not just this top-down emperor hat that you put on and you just, you said, well, it's time to hire someone, so let, fill the room with 1,000 of the worker slaves and, I'll just pick a few of the lucky ones. That is basically the opposite of how it works. You put out advertisements, you pay people to find to find the skilled laborers that you need with good resumes, with good track records, because there's some fluff and there's bad actors out there and people that lie on their resumes. And all of this is to say that as difficult as it is on the laborer side, it is, I'll just say, to be fair, equally as difficult on the hiring side of the table, except that on the hiring side of the table, you have the added pressure of being responsible for the incomes, jobs, healthcare, retirement plans of hundreds of people instead of just you yourself, by yourself, in and of yourself. Just something to think about.
One of my friends said he was so glad when he saved up enough money to start his own business. This way he would never have a boss again. He'd be liberated from having a boss, and then started his own company, only to find out that every customer was an individual boss, and it was way worse than just having one boss. He had to please this one, which was completely contradictory with what this person wanted. This was a landscaping organization. So just a few things that come to mind, because I think this is really important. If you're trying to divide people and you just say, these people do all the work and they get very little. These people do no work and they get a ton. That's so divisive because it's not the reality at all. So what business owners and entrepreneurs generally do is come up with an idea of what to sell. That is extremely difficult. If it's not difficult, just mention all your billion-dollar ideas in the comments so I could have them. Thank you very much. Raise startup capital, market to customers, find a place to store the goods, hire good employees, arrange for shipments, risk money, risk and spend time, your most valuable resource on the planet, and all the time you spend making phone calls, networking, trying to arrange payments, etc. So yeah, I mean, what else do business owners do that the status of the world don't appreciate?
They just don't understand the risk and of your entire life. So like you work for maybe 25 years to finally get up enough resources to hire some people to try this idea that you merely think will be the one successful one that will go somewhere in the market. And you risk everything. Some people even mortgage and double mortgage their houses to get enough funds to actually try out an idea in the marketplace, to hire a few people to get something done. And look, like 95%, given enough time, all companies fail. So there's that. All companies, much like human lives, are destined to end. But even in the short term, even in the 50-year or 100-year span, 95% of companies fail. 95% of people that try and start these things and risk everything fail. They still fail. And it's not this one-sided, top-down, tiny minority making decisions and lording over everyone. That is such a, you said it best. You just said it. It's meant to divide people, to classify people into groups, to other people so that you can then hate them. This is grifting. This whole ideology, maybe I'm overstating my case to say so, is grifting. It's dividing people, hating people, and then profiting either through social or monetary power from the mess that you stir up.
That's a pretty big point, that a lot of that a lot of these places go out of business. So the idea that they have all the power. So they have all the power and then just choose to go out of business. I looked up the Fortune 500 companies in 1955, and it said in 1955 and 2016, only 60 of these companies were in the Fortune 500 in both years. So there's, even among the biggest companies, there's constant turnover because people have options and there's, other people entering the market. Not to mention, there would be even fewer because there wouldn't be so many regulatory hurdles stopping small businesses from competing. And if you look at a lot of these, Boeing, I know, where the other ones? Well, Pfizer, Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing are on this list, and they should not be on that list if it wasn't for the military-industrial complex. So again, the state not only doesn't create competition, it's the biggest hurdle to competition. In 1989 versus 2021, the 20 largest companies by market cap on planet Earth were not the same. So today, the top 5 are Apple, Saudi Aramco, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Facebook. And in 1989, it was Industrial Bank of Japan, Sudimoto Bank, Fuji Bank, Exxon Corp, IBM, General Electric. The turnover's constantly happening.
And I will say that I would bet a significant amount of money that any company that defies what I just said, where they survive for hundreds of years, they're in bed with government. They're profiting in some way from the coercion inherent in government in this guy's democracy. They're taking this guy's democracy and they've manipulated it such that they can profit and never go out of business. They become too big to fail. Banks would probably be the best example of the exception to what I was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
From deciding what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits and the net revenue. That's not a democratic system. But there is a democratic way of organizing.
It's not a democratic system. The thing he failed to mention in this video was, so what? So what?
Exactly.
Not a democratic system.
Exactly.
Why is that a problem? In fact, I would say that a democratic system without coercion, I mean, they exist. They exist, and they typically are very hard to kill. They stick around a long time. They're very resilient to market forces and to market changes, but they also don't scale very well. They can't grow to any sizable company. That requires specialization of labor and specialized skill sets. Some people are better than others at some things, like you said earlier, and hierarchy. I said the H word.
Oh my God. So someone who's been working there for 20 years might have a bigger say than a guy who's it's his first day on the job. No, that's unequal. Oh, it's anti-democratic. My favorite things on the planet are anti-democratic. They're done through like total hierarchy. I mean, I was just thinking of my favorite shows, my favorite movies, my favorite artists, none of which came about as the result of a large scale vote. The best is when, companies will have like, let's vote. If you remember, Mountain Dew said, we're going to have everyone vote on what the Mountain Dew name should be. And it's just funny what people came up with. Long story short, they, of course, abandoned this ridiculous involve everyone idea because a lot of people have an idea doesn't mean it's the smartest thing. As Henry Ford, said in kind of a mean, disrespectful way, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So sometimes it's not always best to listen to the masses.
Organizing an economy, and it's not capitalism. It's called worker cooperatives, and it's an old idea whose time has come. Here's how it works. All the people who work in an enterprise, all of them, one person, one vote. They make the decisions democratically. What to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits that, after all, they've all helped to produce. It would change our economic system. It would democratize not just the enterprises, but the system as a whole. It's long overdue. It's what democracy means when you bring it to the economy, which we should have done long ago. This is Richard Wolff for Econominute.
One of the things that comes to mind is just because you're voting, it's the idea that an ignorant person gets as much of a say as someone who's really intelligent. I think that's a terrible thing to do. It stops you from allowing people to really thrive in areas where they're best. So I went to see Noam Chomsky speak at Arizona State University talking about equality, and one person, spoke 99% of the time, and that was good. Or no, he spoke like 33%, then Glenn Greenwald did, and then Edward Snowden did. He was there on camera. But that's all I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear what anyone else had to say. Just as there is specialization and blatant hierarchy, 3 people getting 99% of the airtime is kind of what you'd expect whenever people are free to associate. Wasn't oppressing us, even though they were perpetuating their ideas they were engaged in what they would call, using their privilege and their fundamental abilities to be able to perpetuate society the way they want to, their influence. So what? It's people organizing without coercion. And just because you get a vote in something doesn't mean you're going to vote in such a way that improves capital equipment, which improves output, which increases wages, which increases living standards over time. So just because the problem in, the year 1300 wasn't that enough people weren't voting. It's because there hadn't been enough capital investment and innovation to increase production. So this is just very typical appealing to the idiots.
You didn't ask the person sitting next to you at that talk. You demand that the person sitting next to you have equal time on the stage. You didn't demand a vote of all the people in attendance to pick the people that should be the ones on stage talking.
Exactly. Well, what about something like the cost of information? So, instead of, Burnham just writing this book, if he just had everyone vote on it, it would be so costly. This is what Thaddeus Russell says. He says, democracy is too much dang work. I got to get involved in everything. I got to learn about it. In the free market, I just have people specialize. And the threat of me disassociating with them is more of an incentive for them to create a good product than me getting a vote once every 10 years.
Yeah, it's called rational ignorance. People are rationally ignorant on a lot of things. Like when I chose to learn TIG welding, I had to choose not to spend my time learning this new programming language that I saw pop up, right? So I made a decision about where my resources were going to go. Some might call that a hierarchy. But no, I guess I just want to repeat kind of some of the things that you've said. People are different. People are different. Some are smart, some are dumb, some are strong, some are weak, some are happy, some are depressed, some are motivated, some are distracted, some are knowledgeable, some are ignorant. And nothing I just said, I don't think anybody would disagree with. So why would you want to have the guy that is dumb, weak, depressed, distracted, and ignorant have their vote on something that affects you be equal to your vote if you are one of the opposite, the people that are well-informed, knowledgeable, motivated, you care, you have, you're bought into it and it matters to you? Why would you want to work? Why would you want to freely associate with other people in that paradigm? Here's another question. Let's say you're one of the people that have saved up your resources, double mortgaged your house, thought you found the idea that you think is going to make it big in the market, and then you're ready to put it all on the line. You're ready to risk it in a venture. Why would you then hire a bunch of people and then give them control over all of the resources that you just worked 25 years of your life to put on the line? When all of those people, all of that they're putting on the line is a day's work. They can quit tomorrow.
Exactly.
That just seems absolutely inane. It just seems just completely irrational and non-realistic thinking. It's just it's class warfare. It goes back to the grifting.
Well, how do these people explain large companies that have gone out of business? I just looked up large companies that went out of business, and I got a Wikipedia list of defunct department stores and defunct, that's a hard word, retailers of the United States. And I was going to show the list and list them off, but it's way too big. Of course, the big ones: Blockbuster, EB Games, Hollywood Video, Most Roundtable Pizza, Sears, the Sears Parade. I mean, this is like one of the biggest, a total monopoly. Starbucks is going to be a monopoly. MySpace, of course, the first social media monopoly that, of course, needs regulation. If you remember, Internet Explorer was going to be the takeover of the internet and the thing we need to regulate, and Microsoft's doing away with it this year just because it's not popular enough. They act like consumers don't influence outcomes the way voters do, when it's just voting with your dollar. What do you think about voluntary worker co-ops like my favorite place to shop, Winco Foods in Arizona? Have you done any research on how those cooperatives work?
Let me just say one more thing before I forget it, and then I'll talk about the co-ops. Just going back to the idea that there's a guy out there that's working to save resources, to put it all on the line, to actually be successful and to make a return and to to get somewhere in his life, productively speaking. That right there is a different kind of person. Most people don't do that. Most people just want to be happy in a day job. And that is what makes them happy. Just doing the 9 to 5 and then having mornings and evenings and weekends free to just not have a care in the world about anything related to the company. Whereas there's some people, there's a tiny hierarchy. No, there's a tiny minority of people that do that. They have the self-discipline and gratification deferral necessary to pool their resources long enough to where they have something substantial enough to be able to employ the people that just want a 9 to 5. So to flatten that hierarchy, you're going to kill the incentive of the rare people that have the ability to do that in an attempt to elevate the outcomes of the people that don't want to do that. It's fascism in the name of equality. And so I guess the next thing I'd say about the co-ops, the most successful, and I don't know if this is actually a co-op because I haven't done the research, is REI. That's the main co-op. I don't know if you have it where you are. REI is an outdoor sporting goods co-op store. And they just became incredibly silly with their COVID rules, even to this day. Even when Texas has been open for months now, they have a guy in a booth out front, in a shielded booth outside the front of the building with a mask and a face shield. And he forces you, not force, that's a bad word, but he makes sure that you are aware that you have to wear a mask in the store. And if you say, no, thanks, he'll let you walk in, but then the manager comes around and basically holds one of those face shields out at you. Anyway, so I haven't been there. That's all to say. I just haven't been there recently. But back when I was, the net effect of it was a corporation that once a year, if I spent enough money there, I would get a little bit of it back in the form of a rebate, or what they would call a dividend. But it was just basically a rebate like you'd get at at your Walmart frequent flyer card, like they'll give you cheaper gas or whatever. That's kind of the most successful example I can think of.
Yeah, I think it's important to say they almost feel like we're stealing something, or we're, being tyrannical by opposing this. All we're really talking about is, one, there's a lot of costs and benefits to the worker cooperative. It's not just this inherently good thing. And if you want to do it voluntarily, no one has the right to stop you. If someone tries to forcibly stop you, I will, and Patrick, I know for a fact, will happily take your side. If you want to live in a place just because there's no objective value to, you have to earn more money is good. Maybe you want more time off. Maybe you want more flexibility in what you wear. The last place I worked, it was a war about the dress code between some of the people, and what counted as facial hair, and at what point was an earring actually a gauge. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. But what Wolf means here, and he's made this very clear, that the state should step in and forcibly stop people from making voluntary contracts, and everything should be a dictatorship of the proletariat worker cooperative. One of the main shortcomings in this is, well, we should be owners and we should be voters. Good. That's what the stock exchange in a free market offers you. But they say, well, no, I want to own my company. A lot of companies offer, what would they call it? Profit sharing and, employee buyback options. But one of the best things about a free market is you can own a company that you don't work for, so you can diversify. Anyone who does investment tells you the value of diversification. Warren Buffett said Ben Graham's book that discusses diversification is like the greatest thing ever. So whether you love or hate Warren Buffett, the point is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if I work at, Sears, I wouldn't want to also own Sears. I might want some in Verizon and some in, I can't think of a single company, Epson, the printer center, Hewlett Packard, or Barnes & Noble. You would want to diversify, so you wouldn't want to own necessarily the company that you work for. Why do people who can't even see that basic ideal want to control the entire economy?
Why are most economists not working in the market? Is another question. I had a really good point, but then I got lost in your amazing words and lost it. So yeah, I think
So, well, if it comes back to you, please please let me know. I want to get into the words of Stalin. We got a few we got a few more minutes here. Think about this, because Wolf happily describes himself as a Marxist, so I'm not strawmanning him here by talking about Marxism. So this is from Dialectical and Historical Materialism by Joseph Stalin. He says, "This means that the main feature of the capitalist system is a most acute class struggle between the exploiters and the exploited." How do you respond to the idea that capitalism, this is a unique thing where there's the exploiters and the exploited?
There's different definitions of the word exploit, and I've kind of tried to tease this apart before in a way that wasn't disingenuous to them and their position. And it's just usually exploit just means to fully utilize a resource.
Yeah.
And if you think of a person as a resource and their labor as a resource, which is a totally reasonable thing to do, when you are managing your resources, you want to get the most out of them as you possibly can. You want to use them as efficiently as possible. You want to not waste them because it's expensive. Why is it expensive? Well, it goes back to that bargaining table that we talked about. But then there's this other version of exploit where people see it as a wholly negative interaction, a wholly one-sided interaction. Like, and this may have come from like the environmentalist movement when they talk about the exploitation of Mother Earth and, you know, the forests that get clear cut and they're exploiting the forests and exploiting the wood and then Mother Earth's natural resources. Well, when you do it in an irresponsible way, that is exploiting it in a bad or inefficient or in a negative way. And so I think the word exploit has a bad rap, and it's used in a way to sort of draw that negativity towards this kind of connotation. Now, maybe the last thing I'll say is that exploitation is also frequently talked about as if it's non-consensual. And of course, we're talking to a Marxist here. So of course, he thinks that wage labor is non-consensual in general. That's not a straw man. That's just a basic foundational point in the plank in their quote unquote philosophy. It is consensual if there's no threat of force involved. And Mother Nature doesn't exist. And this might be hard to explain or hard to understand for some people, but it is just a concept to describe the state of existence. The state of existence includes suffering. It includes struggle. It includes the need to exert effort to prolong your existence and your survival in it. That is just describing reality. That description of reality cannot control you, act on you, exploit you, coerce you in any way. So a lot of times there's this reification of Mother Nature onto the boss at a company. And they're like, well, I have to eat, and this guy's got the food, so gosh darn it, he's exploiting me by making me come to work every day if I want to keep eating. Look, if he didn't do it, you would have to go do something else. You'd have to go grow some food, hopefully convince an animal to come near you long enough to where you could kill it so that you can eat. Like, that's existence. And yeah, so those are my thoughts.
It's incredible. They don't recognize explicit voluntary contracts, but they do recognize the social contract where you have to obey the state, and it's okay to cage people for chipping in because they actually benefit. It's like, well, what if I benefit from my employer? Should I be allowed to make an exchange with him? No, you should be forced to own and forced to get educated on things, just so you could have a vote, even if you explicitly don't want a vote. You made a great point with exploitation, because you could just take that and say consumers exploit us all. Consumer doesn't walk into the store and say, well, I hate the products and services, but I know Patrick Smith works here, so because I care about him. No, it's like, hey, guy who I've never met, do you have a product or service you can give me? This doesn't look exactly how I want it. No, goodbye. They're only using us for our products and services. Employees, they don't go because they love the business owner. They just want the money. So this is actually a good thing. You get people to have harmonize interests that otherwise would be conflicted. So I want something and you want it, so maybe we might fight over it. But if I am constantly exchanging with other people and making these deals that are mutually beneficial, well, then I get money, and in exchange, he gets my labor. And so long as both of us can walk away, then it's not really exploitation, especially the way the state engages in it. So if voluntarily taking advantage of someone is bad, well, then customers and employees are also guilty of this, as is everyone on planet Earth. Well, then it applies tenfold to politicians, to which there is no contract at all.
I love that flipping the script on the word exploiting to the employee. That perfectly illustrates the subjectivity of the grifting nonsense. Like, you didn't pay for that office space. You didn't pay for that computer or that cube or that internet connection or that copy machine, fax machine. You didn't. That's not your business idea. That's not your relationships with all the suppliers. That's not your marketing ideas. Like, none of that's yours. You just waltz in 9 to 5 with a 1 hour lunch break, that you usually don't even take. You don't report, you don't clock out for that. You still get paid for it or whatever. You just waltz in here and then, half-ass your job that you really don't care about, waltz out, and then cash that paycheck. Boy, you don't forget to cash that paycheck. Man, you're just exploiting the company and the company's owners. What's wrong with you? That's terrible.
You're just using me. You don't love me. This is horrible. I'm not even loved. So
that owner didn't say in that.
We didn't vote on how you could spend the money. You greedily just said, I get my whole paycheck. I'm going to spend some here and spend some. Stop shopping at this place. One of the main things is that I think the only accurate system is original appropriation, voluntary contract, voluntary exchange, anarcho-capitalism. So I think we really have a solid foundation there with the work of Hans Hoppe and just everyone else. So a follow-up to this is, how do we make statists bear the cost of having a bad idea? So they can, if you're a farmer who thinks dancing will grow food instead of planting seeds, you are going to bear the cost and you'll be able to see immediately. But if you're just a socialist who has no problem cheering for Hugo Chavez, like Sean Penn did, and Noam Chomsky and Michael Moore, they didn't bear the cost of anything. How do we make socialists, statists, conservative, minarchists, how do we make these people bear the cost of their bad ideas to create a disincentive for them to believe in them and advocate them?
There's only two ways. There's the violent way and the nonviolent way. The violent way is
let's just talk about some nonviolent ways, please.
Well, I just mean resisting the taxation that funds them, right? That's self-defense. That's the violent way. The nonviolent way would be to go galt. Like, you stop letting the looters have access to your productivity. Like, if you're one of the people that is productive, find ways to stop letting looters in your life. Also, there's tons of social answers to this question. Don't associate with people that are looters. I use the term looter very pejoratively, like Ayn Rand did. These are disgusting people that are leeches. They just live off the effort and the productivity of the engines of the world, so to speak. Don't associate with them. Don't allow them in your community, your circles of friends. Like, there's power in social ostracization, is what I'm trying to say. Like, in the same way that the left is so good at hashtag canceling people that they disagree with.
Exactly.
Well, that's functional because it works. Humans care about being parts of communities and being parts of groups of people around them. And so there's power to modify people's behavior through social behavior, social behavioral changes, I guess is what I'm saying.
I had a relationship I thought was on the rocks. It was just a friendship. So I tried throwing a nuke in there because she was really pissing me off one day. I said, I really think I can only hang out. This is actually a real story. I said, I really think I could only hang out with you if you pay me what you believe is the mandatory living wage of $15 an hour, because it's so much work to spend time around you. And here she is thinking I'm joking. And I said, no, it is literal work. So I just need a living wage, unless you don't want me to be alive and you are stopping me from engaging in my right to have a living wage. You really have to hold their feet to the fire. Trust me, they will do it to us. At any point they get, I had a little sneaky progressive psycho really pull this on me. She goes, well, technically what you're engaged in is a violation of the voluntary contract you have with this owner. And it was so trivial. Imagine, someone says you can't think bad thoughts when you're in this church, and you think a bad thought or something. I don't want to get into exactly what it is, but it was using a 3D printer. So she was so ready to use my own ideology against me when it barely applied, only technically, that I think we need to start literally putting it in their face. What was the other one I had? Oh, to just really say, like with the passion and vitriol that they will call us racist for no reason with, we should literally say, you never got our vote to make that video. You never got our collective permission to make that sign and to have this opinion. Molyneux's great against me argument. So you want to put me in a cage for not chipping in for the welfare state or the warfare state. And if I resist, you'll have me killed in front of my daughter, of course, right? That's what you advocate. I just want to make sure we're on the same page with what our relationship really is. So, yeah. I mean, those are things. Anything else come to mind as far as peaceful mechanisms to make statists bear the cost of their bad ideas? Immoral ideas, not just bad.
The only thing I would add is just on the end of that, just a healthy heaping load of just disgust at the person. Like that is just like I'm just so disgusted by people that think it's okay to use threats to get what they want. I'm just so disgusted by people that think they can point guns at people to rob them in the street. And you don't realize it, whoever you are, but you're doing that exact same thing. That is disgusting, violent thug behavior. Stop it. I don't want to know you if that's the type of person you are. That kind of language helps. I think
it does. It does. Yeah. It's what Ayn Rand called the argument from intimidation. Anything that shows disapproval, not like I'm going to hurt you intimidation, anything that shows just disapproval. God, I can't believe the dementia patient in the White House. That's who you support. Oh my God. Goodbye. I can't even talk anymore. So something like that. A couple more Stalin quotes that I just want to ask your opinion on. The basis of the relations of production under the socialist system, which so far has been established only in the USSR, is the social ownership of the means of production. Here, there are no longer exploiters and exploited. The goods produced are distributed according to labor performed on the principle, he who does not work, neither shall eat. Well, look at that.
Wait.
The labor theory of value is you only get it if you worked for it. So in other words, all welfare is illegitimate because they don't work for it. That is page 39 of Dialectical and Historical Materialism by Stalin.
I mean, that contradicts. I'm a little bit mind blown right now. I've never heard that quote before. That's a contradiction of so much. Wow.
Yeah. And I promise I've read the whole thing. I'm not taking it out of context. So yeah, but that's of course how you justify the gulags and forced labor. Well, you have to, or you can't eat. Anyone who doesn't pay their fair share in taxes, et cetera. You could just take the same logic there.
Yeah, but so if you have to work either way, then where's the exploitation in a voluntary company, wage labor job? Like you're still working and not eating if you don't. So that just eliminates that as an option for exploitation, because in both locations you're working. And if you don't work in either location, you will not eat.
There's something about the mindset of really caring about incentives. So if they'll say, oh, the business owner is out for profit, but the state does it for the greater good. So even before you've even cared about, whether it's moral and the benefits reaped, we already have the good people the state, doing it for everyone, very caring for the collective, and then greedy, selfish, individualist. Even though the amazing thing is that everyone seeking their individual interests while working voluntarily ends up complementing each other. So the only way you can earn a lot of money is by pleasing a large number of consumers.
Yeah. And I think a good bookend for the discussion is just to remind people that communes can exist in a capitalist society because anarcho-capitalists refuse to control people. However, in a communist society, in a Marxist society, capitalists cannot exist because the Marxists will coerce them out of their property if they use it in a way they don't like. So in terms of which is more moral, well, how about the one that respects consent? I think that's a good maybe final thing for me to say on it.
Excellent. Patrick Smith of Disenthrall, thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everyone for watching Keith Knight Don't Tread on Anyone and the Libertarian Institute.